Let's talk about fears that we are seeing a massive hit to tourist towns as the COVID jobs crisis hits, as Labour Party urges support for the domestic tourism sector. So much talk about aviation and getting people abroad on their holidays and getting them back without quarantine. But let's talk about all this with the Labour MP, Shadow Work and Pension Secretary Jonathan Reynolds. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning. So tell us, your leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is going to call for targeted support for domestic tourism jobs. What sort of help does he want given to them?
Good morning, Julia. Yes, well, Keir is in Falmouth today because what our research has discovered is, now look, we know unemployment is a huge problem across all parts of the UK. But what we found today is places that have a much higher number of jobs in the tourism sector have been disproportionately hit by the unemployment crisis so far, as many as 65 percentage points higher levels of unemployment in those places. And the crucial thing that Keir is going to be calling for today is that the furlough scheme, which obviously starts to be wound down from the beginning of next month until it ends at the end of October, that has to, the one-size-fits-all approach that the government's got with that, that's what has to change. It's going to be targeted on those sectors where they still haven't got the revenue coming in, where jobs are still at risk. And that would particularly be tourism, hospitality. We need that flexibility from the government to make sure this unemployment crisis doesn't get any worse.
Look, a lot of people listening who will be very sympathetic to those people. And again, people may have worked really, really hard, set up their own businesses, or employees through no fault of their own, seeing their job lost when other people are keeping their jobs. However, the furlough scheme was set up at a time when we're in lockdown. People can't go to work. They're banned legally from leaving their homes. These businesses can't possibly have customers at that time. We're coming out of lockdown. We're seeing more and more freedoms. Realistically, a lot of those jobs will not survive. A lot of those businesses will not survive. Can the government indefinitely prop up millions of businesses, millions of jobs with a furlough scheme that lasts, years?
Well, it's not about it being indefinite. It's about being why people need it. So I completely agree, Julie. You've got to tie it to those businesses which still haven't got the revenue coming through. Now, of course, as businesses have to meet their own, or start to meet part of their own payroll costs, if the revenue isn't there to do that, they'll have to make more people unemployed. And we know from previous crises that actually significant levels of unemployment, it can actually be in the country's best interest financially as well as morally to support people in work in that time rather than simply put them on unemployment benefits. The crucial thing is this. I'm going to be spending my summer holiday here in the UK next week. I'm looking forward to that, but it's still going to be a short season for those businesses. It's still going to be the case that they can't be at full capacity because of social distancing regulations. And until we've got that full and effective test and trace system in place so people have confidence, so businesses can have something that looks like normality being in place, they're going to suffer. And like you say, these are people who have built up their own businesses. They deserve that support until the government's got in place the system that we need. It's got to be willing to support those businesses through this period because, frankly, the last thing this country needs is even higher levels of unemployment.
Absolutely. But realistically, for how long would you expect that support to continue? We're talking about months and months and months. We're looking at a £30 billion cost of the furlough scheme so far. I'm very supportive of that scheme. I think it was, I felt quite tearful when it was announced by the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, at the time that help was being offered to people who are going to lose work otherwise. But we are looking at businesses that are not going to see an uptick for at least another year, if then. How can we possibly prop every single one of these businesses and every single one of these jobs up in full for another year?
Oh, it's not about propping them all up. I think that's a really important point. So you could target it at certain sectors like tourism or hospitality. You could do what other countries have done where you look at businesses which are still losing revenue and have a threshold for that. It's about flexibility. It's not about one size fits all. But crucially, we've got to understand that, first of all, unemployment is very, very serious in the UK right now. But as that scheme starts to become unwound, more and more people will lose their jobs unless there is a willingness from the government to meet that flexibility. And let's be clear, we're 4 months into this crisis. We haven't got in place that full test and trace system that we knew that we needed. We knew countries who'd managed this well, like South Korea. That is how they had done it. Until we can say to businesses, look, everything is in place to try and get things back to normal, we've got to decide as a country whether we're willing to lose those businesses through no fault of their own, businesses that would be viable in different times if the situation wasn't as it is. I think until we haven't got that system in place for them, and we should have it in place, but we haven't, we've got to be willing to give them that support. we should be fighting for every job. We might not be able to save every job, but we should be fighting for it, because as unemployment, 2.8 million the claimant count is at the minute. What will it be if we start to lose some of those 9 million jobs that are already on furlough?
Yeah, the fears of 10% unemployment. Can I ask you just finally about the march to number 10 today for NHS workers demanding a pay rise for the work that they've done through the pandemic? Look, a lot of people, were out like I was and you were out clapping for the NHS, thanking them for their diligent work. But is it really appropriate for public sector workers who are guaranteed to keep their jobs at a time when we could face 10% unemployment to be demanding pay rises and other people are scrabbling just to hold on to a job at all?
Well, look, those people have been heroes. I don't in any way object to
Well,
them.
have they all? Has every NHS worker been a hero? I know lots of people working in the NHS who've barely had to do anything because no one's been turning up. If you're not working on a coronavirus ward, people working on the coronavirus wards are heroes, but not everyone working in the NHS is a hero. Let's stop that nonsense.
Well, I don't think that is true, but let's remember as well, many of those people would have been on the receiving end of a pay freeze for many, many years, over 5 years in many cases. So their levels of salary are essentially not where they would have been in different circumstances. So the fact that they want to remind us of that as politicians, as the public, I have no objection to that at all.
You think it's absolutely fine while other people are losing their jobs left, right and centre, that public sector workers guaranteed to keep their jobs should be asking for a pay rise at a time when public finances are as dire as they are? You really think that's appropriate?
I'm not in the business of paying off one worker against another. People who are putting in a shift, doing the right thing for this country, if they want to remind us they've had a difficult time on pay or in terms and conditions over the last decade, that is absolutely fine with me.
Do you think they've had a more difficult time than people in the private sector who've got no job security?
Well, I wouldn't divide people in that way. I think that is a fool's errand to try and split people in that way. Look, they've done a great job for us in this crisis. Let's not start criticising them now, please.
I'm not criticising them, asking whether or not we should be prioritising pay rises for people who've got guaranteed jobs. But there we are. Jonathan Reynolds, lovely to speak to you, Shadow Work and Pension Secretary. Thank you very much indeed for that.